Okay. Hi, and welcome to another special episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin. We are here the day after the end of the Toronto conference, and today, as always, I'm joined by the other hosts of Let's Talk Bitcoin, Andreas Antonopoulos and Stephanie Murphy.
Hello.
Hey there.
It's the after-school special of Let's Talk Bitcoin, the after-conference special.
Yes. We also have a special guest this time. Very, very happy to say that Mr. Amir Taaki is joining us for this recording. Mr.
Pleased to meet your acquaintance.
How are you doing today, Amir?
Wow, what an intense weekend.
Seriously. So what about it for you was particularly intense?
Just the real sense of community and all the people so very nice and warm, and there's real heart in everything that everybody's doing. You know, it's very different from all the other conferences. This is the one conference I've chosen to come to in the last year or 2 years.
Well, we're very
happy to have come.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're very glad you did.
I think you picked a good one, yeah. Earlier this week, I was just in New York City for the Inside Bitcoins conference. Totally different vibe, totally different flavor. It was, a lot of investors, a lot of VCs and people with projects trying to raise money, a lot of talk about how to comply with regulations. Actually, that was all that people talked about at the New York one.
Well, it's a media bistro.
Well, you know what Bitcoin's about, freedom.
Right, you wouldn't have known from that conference.
Yeah.
But Toronto was way more community focused, so I enjoyed that nice. It's like the yin and the yang,
and a huge turnout as well.
Yeah. I was really impressed by. They must have a big community here in Toronto to begin with, because they've got Bitcoin Decentral, and there's a lot of people working on Ethereum here and other various projects. And it just seems like the whole community kind of volunteered to do this conference, and they're going to invest whatever they take away from it back into the conference. It's really a community building thing.
It's really interesting also noting that Ethereum was, this is a Bitcoin conference and put on by the Bitcoin Foundation, or the Bitcoin, not the Bitcoin Foundation.
Bitcoin
Alliance of Canada. Thank you for correcting my second mistake on that.
They're the anti-foundation.
Well, I don't know if they're the anti-foundation, but they're a different organization, certainly. But Ethereum was the single largest sponsor of it. They were the platinum sponsor. And so it was interesting. I saw, at the end, they had 5 or 6 big boxes of T-shirts. They were just basically giving out giant handfuls to people. I see you have a pile of Ethereum T-shirts in the corner here too. So
I have a pile.
Yes, exactly.
I had massive fun playing with people.
So, that looks like it's an exciting project. But what do we think about having such a heavy presence for a project like that at a, quote, Bitcoin conference? Is this good, bad, trends,
We're all friends.
I thought it was great. I mean, this all feeds into the same concept. This is the year where we're beginning to see Bitcoin being treated as a platform, not a currency, or a platform as well as a currency. And Ethereum takes that concept and pushes it further. I've never seen Ethereum as competing against Bitcoin, and I'm working with the proof of concept code. And the very first contract I want to write in Ethereum is one that allows you to pay for Ethereum contracts with Bitcoin. It's the obvious combination. And so, it was great. It was great to have this community. And it also brings us a different perspective, a perspective that's less about how do we make money and how do we do shopping, and more about how do we use this as a platform to build hundreds and hundreds of applications that can do different things. Just one example.
Some people who want to make money off of Ethereum.
Without a doubt. But the people who were talking about the Ethereum code and Ethereum platform were doing some really interesting projects. At the hackathon at Bitcoin Decentral, for example, one of the projects they had was using an electronic door lock that could be unlocked based on ownership of an Ethereum contract. And the obvious application for that is to do an Airbnb rental, where once you've paid for the contract for your stay, it automatically gives you the credentials to unlock the door so you can go into this Airbnb. And you can imagine doing that with cars, such as Zipcar style services based on the blockchain, or Lyft, or things like that.
Hang on, wait a second. You're telling me that that in the future when I'm doing Airbnb, I'm not going to have to get a special key at the lobby and then go up to floor 10M and then go to a locker room and then go through 2 doors in order to get in, and then do a padlock and unlock a thing in order to get my key in order to go to my room. I'm not going to have to do that. I'll just be able to use my phone?
Yes, pretty much. It's
You're ruining my day, Andreas. Well, I love all of them. I think it's great.
Yeah,
it's great, but it's like, this was like a hackerspace project. They just went and bought one of these demonstration. These are like doors that are only 5 inches tall with a lock on them. It's like, I can't fit through that, but no, it's for demonstrating the locks. And they had it connected up to a Raspberry Pi, and they were writing Ethereum contracts to control doors. And
but
it's
a
just
5-inch door, you could use that for a safe or for like, something that keeps a different key in it or something.
Or for very small people.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in Zoolander where he goes, this thing can't even fit a school for ants.
Tell me about some of the other uses of Ethereum that you were talking about before. Like you mentioned some interesting ideas.
Well, I think what people misunderstand is the possibility of using Ethereum to do projects without having to create a full community of interest that's going to mine your blockchain just to support your project. Let's say you have a niche project, for example, and to use the theme of social justice and things like that, which are not immediately obvious in the Ethereum space. Let's say you want to do something like the Swiss Guaranteed Basic Income project, where you want to create a coin where every round of confirmations donates money to the people who are poorest in the network, essentially guaranteeing them a basic income, and that's how the coin is issued. Now, if you build that as your own blockchain, you have to find a lot of people to agree with those politics, to agree with that idea, to mine your coin so that it's secure and it can't be taken over with a 51% attack. If you build it on Ethereum, all you have to know is that there's enough people building other useful things on Ethereum to mine Ethereum, so you get all of that security for free without having to persuade people to buy into your projects.
That's an interesting argument that you're making, because is that not possible using other meta coins? Because there are lots of things that Ethereum can do that simply cannot be done with some of these other meta layers that are out there. But what you just described there, I think you actually
why not
can
use
do.
Bitcoin for
why
it?
not use a protocol built on top of Bitcoin to do that?
Well,
Because you're talking about using the reward of the issuance to do something specific, but without having that attached to the mining function.
Okay, but this is what I'm saying is that with protocols like both Mastercoin and Counterparty, that's all they do. So anyways, I agree that this is possible. I'm just saying that it doesn't seem like that's a particular advantage of Ethereum. The particular advantage of Ethereum is that you can do anything. You can do all these incredibly arbitrarily complex things.
Right.
Whereas with the meta coins and stuff like that, you really can't. They're more about just creating a value token, and then however you distribute it is whatever.
I'm a bit skeptic about arbitrarily complex things, because if we imagine the concept of having like a robot which is operating an organization, and that robot, maybe like when you choose to join that organization, you consent to the code which operates it, and like maybe you want to change something, you can say, okay, modify this code, and so it's all open source, and especially with provable computation, you get even more of that. But with Ethereum, it's like there's a blockchain and everybody is running those computations. So for me, it seems like there's putting a limit or a roof on the complexity of the software that can operate your organizations. I know you said about Moore's law, but even with Bitcoin now, it's like when I work a lot with the blockchain, and that's my area of speciality in Bitcoin development. And there is a lot of like very different things that you have to consider in terms of properties or these massive databases.
Yeah.
It becomes very tricky to manage at some point.
But I think that would be a good problem to have. If we get to the point where the demand for code complexity in contracts has increased so much that we have to solve optimization problems, then that in essence proves the need for a Turing complete scripting language and the fact that there is demand for highly complex transactional code. And then we do have to solve the optimization problem, and that's a great problem to solve, because you've just opened a whole new area of blockchain-based technology. Right now, we don't even know if there's a demand for it. So,
well, I guess the only thing I'm wondering about is why they chose to go with this model where they have a deep interlinkage between all the contracts, rather than like you only run the computations for the set of contracts and transactions that you are interested in, rather than running all of everything on the whole network. That for me would maybe make more sense.
That's a great question, and I think what we're going to see as soon as Ethereum is launched and proves that it can operate is we're going to see alt contracts, essentially alternative clones of Ethereum. Why not? I would very much like to see alternative implementations. just like when Bitcoin proved that this was something that could work and it was interesting and people could do useful things with it, it launched hundreds of altcoins. If Ethereum works, it's going to launch hundreds of alt contract platforms.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I also like all the different projects people are doing, exploring the space, and we're all friends together, and open source projects. We can share the code, we can share techniques, and it's all very positive.
Yeah, I mean, this is the normal, I think, curve of a technology as it matures. You start out with an experimentation phase where the code fragments massively into all kinds of variations. And you get into this very fragmented phase, a fragmentation phase. Then you start going into a standardization phase. Where things start getting normalized again. You develop some common standards so you don't have to replicate everything and reinvent the wheel with every different version. And then finally you get to an optimization phase where you start trying to solve issues of scale and issues of performance. But you can't really get directly to the optimization phase until you've gone through the previous two phases. You have to do the experimentation and you have to start standardizing, but you won't know what you're going to standardize until you've seen all the variations of the people want to do with it.
This is also my concern with Bitcoin as well. Right now there is this very strong tendency for developers to overload Bitcoin with a ton of features, like every programmer's pet project. And for me, the thing with Bitcoin is that I believe that it should be kept very pure and very focused as a currency.
A simple protocol stack, and then move the rest of the development up into the layers. I don't think that's going to be a problem, really, Amir. I think the way the consensus mechanism is distributed between developers, miners, web wallet companies, merchant companies, payment processors, all of them have to agree under the process of consensus. Otherwise, you can't do a hard fork.
Well, it already happened with the BIP 16 addresses.
Yes.
But in the beginning, it was like the proposal was op eval.
Yes.
But then it was discovered that there was actually some exploits in this. And then it was like, okay, we just make this hack to the scripting language. And then there was like a loss of properties of static analysis. So then the developers were like, oh, let's make it so it's push only. And a lot of that was actually rushed through very quickly.
Right.
And then we had the multi-sig addresses, and multi-sig hasn't even been used. We still don't have it in any of the Bitcoin clients. And my concern is like, maybe we should take a step back, and really, if we want to make these kind of fundamental changes to Bitcoin, really, really think them through.
So you actually think that Bitcoin development is going too fast?
In terms of changing the standard of the protocol, yeah, there's a very strong pull to do that.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to slow down. I think because consensus is now diffuse among so many different parties, it's going to get harder and harder and harder to pull through a hard fork type change, because you won't be able to get enough people to agree to it until probably 2 to 3 years from now. The core protocol grinds to a halt. It becomes completely static, because just like IPv4 came to a halt, because at some point it gets embedded in so much hardware and so much specialized software and so many embedded devices that you can't change all of them to do a completely new version of the code. So then whatever we've done by that time, that's it. That's going to be Bitcoin forever.
The converse of that is looking at like web standards, which every year they add more and more stuff in there, and in the end it's something so complex that is like massively long with different pages that only large corporations can actually implement that, and that actually stops the diversity of the ecosystem. But
they had to do that in the layers above IP, because IP became essentially ossified. It got built into silicon so many times that you couldn't really change it. I think Bitcoin's being built into silicon. Here's one example for the BIP32 standard for hierarchical deterministic wallets, and how you do the path discovery and seeding and key generation for those paths. That standard is now being driven primarily by the implementation of it in the Trezor hardware wallet, because once that hit hardware, they couldn't make any more changes. So now everything has to be considered, well, can we do this, or will it break backwards compatibility with Trezor? And this is going to happen increasingly as things hit hardware. essentially Bitcoin is going to turn into a firmware, hardware implemented protocol in many devices, and then you can change it. Then whatever we have, we're stuck with.
Well, you can change it.
But just with enormous cost and enormous difficulty.
Right, exactly. You just essentially invalidate everyone who came before.
Yes, and IPv6 has been trying to do that for 16 years and failing.
Yeah, it hasn't got very far.
Hasn't gone very far. Despite enormous needs to do it, because addresses have run out.
Is that a centralized organization or a decentralized organization?
It's a completely decentralized organization, and IPv6 can't replace IPv4 because the IPv4 protocol is embedded in so many places, and you can't obsolete all of them. So, I mean, that is a classic example of what happens with a protocol. It can't even support its own upgrade anymore.
Okay, so if Bitcoin is vulnerable to that, then Ethereum might be even more vulnerable to that, because like people are already talking a lot about a lot of applications for it that really do interface with hardware, like the locks that you were talking about.
Yeah, but the point is, I think Ethereum is less vulnerable to that, because Ethereum, instead of like Bitcoin, where if you want to implement new things, you have to do protocol changes, Ethereum flips that on its head and says, here are a basic set of primitives. These will not change. The code you execute on top of these primitives can be as varied as you want. So now when you want to do a new application, you don't need new features in the protocol stack. You just reuse the existing primitives. That means you can standardize the underlying protocol stack much sooner.
So for people who don't understand what primitives are, we're talking about, these are essentially like building blocks.
Building blocks, yeah.
That's the thing that they can't change then, right? Like they
can't change the building blocks.
They have to get that right from the beginning.
The building blocks have to be right from the beginning, but they are much more basic, whereas with Bitcoin, what we're doing is with every new application, we're adding new building blocks. So multisig, for example, involved changing the fundamental building blocks of the protocol to implement in a very ugly hack. Whereas in Ethereum, you wouldn't need to do that at all. You would just use the signature primitive and the key primitives, and then you'd implement the actual multisig as a contract, which could be in an abstract language.
So, Amir, how does this relate to the work that you've done with Bitcoin?
You mean Ethereum?
Not Ethereum. No. I mean this hack together everything in one approach.
Well, I think it's very important to have a diverse ecosystem.
Can you just summarize Bitcoin real quick?
Yeah, it's a Bitcoin implementation. There's different implementations of the standard as set down by Satoshi when he first wrote Bitcoin.
So this is for our listeners. This would be like the implementation of the World Wide Web standards in Firefox versus Chrome, right? And we have one standard which is the Bitcoin core implementation, the Satoshi reference client. Let's say that's Chrome, and then you've built a different one which is, say, Firefox.
Yeah, and it's very important in software to have a diverse ecosystem. If you look at Linux, which runs a lot of our infrastructure, our technological infrastructure, it's very secure because it's so diverse. There is no really one attack that you can use against all the Linuxes. Like in nature, if you start to have, if the population drops below a certain size, there isn't enough genetic variation that one pathogen can go and quickly wipe out the entire population.
Yeah.
And we have to build our software, especially if we're thinking about big distributed systems, with the same principles in mind. And
not like bananas.
Like bananas.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not just a funny comment. Bananas are all cloned from the exact same plant. The banana that we know, the Chiquita banana, is a relatively new invention, and it's all cloned. And the reason it was cloned is because the previous type of banana was completely wiped out worldwide by a single pathogen, and not a single example of it exists. And they're trying to recreate the previous type of banana because apparently it was tastier. But all of the bananas in the world are essentially clones of the same organism, and they're very susceptible to a single pathogen wiping them all out, which is exactly your argument about the Bitcoin implementation.
Recently, no?
Yes, there's actually a pathogen right now that is wreaking havoc across banana plantations.
Starvation problems and so on. Yeah.
So the banana is a perfect example of a strict monoculture that is very susceptible because it has no genetic variation. But even in things like over-engineered crops like wheat or corn, that's a problem. Whereas other things like rice that have a lot more variety in regional areas are less susceptible to single pathogens. You're right. We need to do that in Bitcoin too. And LibBitcoin is awesome because it gives us another perspective. Bitcoin J by Mike Hearn is another example of a completely independent implementation of Bitcoin, and I believe there's BTCD, which is an implementation in the Go language
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but also it's important as well that if you want to build a real community around Bitcoin software, that we actually build the software such that it allows developers to participate. The problem with the Bitcoin D software is it's very poorly engineered. It's a massive blob. It's
a hairball.
Yeah, and a lot of the code as well, like in many places, is even doing really dodgy things, like the C script inheriting from std vector, which has a non-virtual destructor, could potentially cause a memory leak, or even in the serialization code, there's many times where it's just like copy paste with the arguments changed or one more argument added instead of like using templates, and also the dodginess with all the locks, and there's many different things. Like sometimes just looking and you just see them all around.
And that's the massively improved version of the code after 5 years.
Yeah.
I think one thing we do know about Satoshi Nakamoto is he wasn't a very good programmer.
I know people
he was
say
a genius
programmer.
He's a genius cryptographer without a doubt, and a genius in terms of digital currencies and the economic implications and how you build a monetary system on digital currencies. Genius. But if you look at his code, anyone who really is a good coder looks at it and thinks, oh my God, what a mess.
But actually, the guy as well, when I read his paper, I get a strong sense he's a physicist, not a mathematician, not a computer, but a physicist. Like he really writes in that kind of sense.
Right.
And an academic.
Yeah, so she's definitely not a really good C++ programmer.
You always say she.
I don't know why. You always say he.
Yeah, wicked.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.